When people say coming home to me, what do you
Mm.
think that means?
I, I think, well, let me tell you why I think it's so hard. I think it's hard primarily because of what I just said. We are very conditioned to follow a mold. So coming home to yourself is the number one factor is courage. Because when you come home to holy shit, this is truly who I am, particularly for women when we're often told we're too much or too little. Nobody's
Right.
just right. Nobody is just right. You're either too fat or you're too thin, or you're too rich or you're too poor, or you're too loud or you're too submissive,
It's
right?
all
Women,
extremes.
yeah, exactly. So when you come to that medium and you're like, well, this is my center, and my center may be too far left or too right. Who gives a shit? This is my center. That's where you come home. But it is scary as hell because if you sit with it long enough, your world starts shaking. You become intolerable of the bullshit and intolerable of things that hold you down. And if you get through it, some call it the dark night of the soul or whatever, but if you get through it, then there's light to be had. Your best years may come after that, right? There's this whole sort of youth misconception of, your best years, your 20s, 30s, you got a perky ass and you're having a lot of sex, right? Great, you can eat hamburgers at 2 in the morning, whatever. But I know a lot of people that have stuck through the pain of that excavation back to themselves and are leading their best lives in their late 40s and their 50s. And that gives me hope. I'm still working on it.
Yeah, I mean, like, do you think that people know when they've come back to themselves? Like, do you feel like they know that they sort of made it? Like, is there a feeling that you have, do you think?
Yeah, I think we with media and sometimes with stories, we think it's like a thunderclap, like something hits you on the head. Sometimes it
Yeah,
is,
it's like all
like,
white light.
yeah,
Ooh.
exactly. Or yeah, it's a near-death experience, or it's like something traumatic, and then you're like, fuck this shit, I'm out, whatever. In my experience, it comes in piecemeal. And that's why the whole idea of being present and being conscious is so important, because these messages start coming to you more and more and more from different aspects of your life. And you have to be awake enough to see them and connect the dots.
Right. And to be prepared to get uncomfortable. And I know that the opening to your YouTube videos, it says, "Okay, welcome to Kaamna Live. Get prepared to get uncomfortable." And that's what this whole year has been like for me.
Sure. Did you find that you had sort of a big personal development moment during this pandemic and this shit show that we've experienced for the last year and a
Yeah,
half?
because I think for me, it sort of just it all sort of coincided just by chance. I had figured like, okay, I got to do something. I got the midlife itchies. I've been home for 16 years. I need to do something. I don't know what that is. Okay, I'm going to start a podcast, and then 2 weeks later, COVID hits.
Mm.
So it was sort of like I was happy in a sense because I was like, oh, I have this renewed project. I know nothing about how to build a podcast or an Instagram. And now I'm going to be home for the foreseeable
Ever.
future, forever. And with my teenagers with me, how fun. And I think that having that time alone when they were in school and like really thinking through all of this and kind of, COVID was negative in so many ways, but there were silver linings. It
Yeah.
forced us all to kind of spotlight things that have been sort of burning and churning inside us for so
Hmm.
long. And then they were able to come to the surface. And while that's really hard, it's also renewing.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think for those of us who didn't die
Yeah,
and who had a roof over their heads, and your basic needs were taken care of, I
totally.
think there was a big opportunity. The tricky thing with COVID is, yes, we were stuck inside, yes, we were isolated in many ways, so we got to get in touch with those feelings. But then what? Right? If you're
Totally.
a single person, and even midlife, and you're single, and you suddenly realize, look, I want to date, then there were so many restrictions. So, and we're still kind of in that way. So what do you do with that energy? For me, it's putting it out in videos. I write, I sing, I have to get the energy out, because as you talked about in the intro, I find that when there's energy floating around in my space that I don't tackle, it ricochets on me. I experience pain, like my body starts breaking down, I get unwell. And at least I've learned that pattern now, so I can redirect the energy elsewhere.
I love that. And I think part of the midlife part of the hard part of a midlife self reinvention journey is sometimes you don't know what it is you want.
Oh yeah.
It's like
All
you're
the time.
itchy. Yeah, you're like
Yeah.
itchy. You're like, okay, do I want to start a business? Do I, want to adopt a kid? Do I want to have another kid? Whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's because we're looking for this kind of novelty and newness. And, the research shows that every 5 to 7 years, we sort of become psychologically itchy for the next thing.
Mm,
And I think we also put so much pressure on ourselves that whatever that next thing is has to be like, Brene Brown's podcast or Forbes
right.
400 company. And the hardest part is figuring out and getting comfortable with starting small and being okay with that.
Yeah. No, it's true. And what's coming to mind for me is in my program we study a lot of positive psychology, right? And positive psychology, you might be familiar with it,
Yeah.
is the opposite of clinical psychology, where Freud and his buddies just only think about what's wrong with you. So this is kind of the study of what's strong with you. So character strengths, positive traits, blah, blah, blah. And when you're thinking about what we want to do and we want to put out there, what the research shows is the life that is most correlated with good life satisfaction, higher life satisfaction, is a life that is filled with meaning and purpose. And that has to do with serving our communities. That has to do with serving a purpose larger than yourself. And for many of us, we start with that internal, well, what do I want to do? But if we turn it outside, and I'm not Mother Teresa. I'm far from it. I do small bits of service in a way I think is in keeping with me and who I
Mm-hmm.
am. But that is a piece that is so interesting when this information gets out to people, all you like volunteering for an organization.
Right.
Look how much compassion COVID brought out into the world. I mean, there were food chains, there were people in India who were running groceries and picking them up for old people and dropping them to their homes. There were people singing in the street, like free concerts just for each other. And that is a fundamental element of humanity that I don't think we talk about enough. It's relegated to the nonprofit world, all the do-gooders, the tree huggers, blah, blah, blah. But it's actually it's a very fundamental human desire.
Yeah, and I think that community and feeling of feeling held by
Mm,
people in your community is also a huge predictor of life satisfaction.
yep.
And I think even when we used to get on the balconies and sing or whatever during the pandemic, everyone sort of felt like they had like a mini moment, a mini purpose, even if it was for those
Yep.
5 minutes. It's sort of
Yep.
like if you go to a show and you're like, I don't need to clap, everybody else is clapping. But if everybody said that, then no one would be clapping.
Mm,
So it's like we have to remember that, like, no matter how small something feels, like there is a purpose,
yeah.
or
And I
there would
think
be
for
no
women,
clappers.
so the interesting thing here is, in a capitalist world, particularly for women, raising children is not monetized. It's not
Yeah.
monetizable. As we talk about it, it is the hardest work with no payoff. Yeah, yeah, kids love you unconditionally, but sometimes
Yeah.
that's not enough,
Yes.
right?